Welcome back to the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. Travis Reier, Senior Analyst for BOL, and we have a quad box for you on this Thursday morning, July the 11th, 2024. Tim Watts right there. You see in the bottom squares, we've also got Senior Recruiting Editor Andrew Bone, and of course, the prodigy, Joseph Hastings, down there as well. Diagonal to me on this Thursday morning. And guys, look, they're already rolling into the show chat. So, hey, let's say some hellos to the folks. How about that as we get things going? We've got so much to talk about on the recruiting front. A couple of new 5-stars in the On3 Industry Rankings that we want to get to, and just really across the board, some fun discussion. Tim, we've got Otacon. I guess that's how you pronounce that, guys. So with the Roll Tide, Roll Y'all. He also says, hit that like button. We like
Thank
that.
you.
Yes.
Appreciate
We
that.
like those. C-Fed with a Roll Tide. Hookin' and Bookin' Bros, a loyal viewer here of the program.
Very.
Says, subscribe and Roll Tide. But yeah, thanks to everyone rolling in here. JT83 offering up a good morning. Austin Brooks doing the same. Again, we thank you so much for jumping in here on the live programs. And again, as the others have said here before us, hit that like button if you don't mind. Subscribe to the YouTube channel here for BamaOnLine.com and turn on those notifications. That way you get all the YouTube content as it drops. All right, guys. So much to get into. Tim, we'll start with you, and sort of the ongoing news of the week has been updated rankings for prospects where the 2025 cycle is concerned. And here in the last 24 hours, that's been good news for a couple of guys.
Yeah, I love rankings. I'm gonna be honest with you. I like the debates. I understand the frustration. I understand it. I don't actually feel the frustration they do. Haven't seen so many people rise from June to February. I mean, you don't have to be in this business long to see how this thing moves and how it shakes. And I've did rankings, so I understand what goes into the process for the guys that do. Andrew's been a part of the evaluation process. Joseph's been, had his voice heard. You have Travis. So we know how much work there is to do with 3 guys basically covering an entire nation of high school guys and how much they change. They grow 3 inches. We've all heard the story. So, but yeah, Keelan Russell getting his composite industry ranking 5th star. I think it's deserved. I mean, I understand that we had a good debate on the round table because the Charles Power, Cody Blair, Steve Wiltfong didn't quite move him into that 5-star range, but also there's like 15 5-stars. They're going to extend by the end of the year to 32. He's 37th. He's 37th. So he's definitely in the table in the discussion for it. But I think it's well deserved. I think he earned it. He played his way into it, and he's had a tremendous summer.
Yeah, he has. No doubt about that for Keelan Russell. And you've been very aware of Dijon Lee, Andrew, and done a great job along with Joseph and Tim of keeping us up to speed on the very talented corner from Southern California. Another guy that it seems like, Andrew, kind of where you look, he's right on that cusp of a 5 or a 5, and now he is an On3 Industry Rankings 5-star.
If you go through and look at all the different ranking services, especially two rival, or excuse me, 24/7 and On3 Sports, I mean, they're all pretty close. There's not really a big difference with any of the guys. I mean, they're all kind of, you look at Dijon Lee, the 4th ranked cornerback or the 6th ranked cornerback. It's kind of like with Keelan Russell, the 6th best quarterback or the 7th best quarterback. I mean, that's just kind of how it is, across the across the entire board. But Dijon Lee is one of the best overall defensive backs in the country, one of the best overall defensive players, 6'3.5", almost 200 pounds. Can play corner. Is a corner, but can also move around in the secondary. But I think, everybody tries to compare these different sites. A lot of these guys are seeing a lot of the same kids, but you also miss a lot of the same. You also miss a lot of kids throughout the cycle. So if you go out to a high school football camp, see a kid, you really like them, it doesn't mean that the other sites there watching the exact same thing. It might just be one of those situations where you were there and the other guy wasn't there. They might see somebody else that's just a little bit better, or they feel like it's just a little bit better. So there's a whole rankings process. that goes throughout the entire season. You're going to evaluate guys during the fall. You're going to evaluate guys in all-star games after the season is over. So there's there's still a lot kind of going on in the ranking circle. This isn't the end of the process.
I want to piggyback with Andrew here. How boring would it be if they were all the same? What the hell would we talk about? What would we talk about if everybody came out and these rankings were the same? So, I mean, we want to debate this. This is a debatable subject. Sorry to jump in there, Andrew.
And a great time of year for it. No doubt. It makes for a lot of fun. It makes for a lot of lively discussion. And look, it's July 11th, right? It's a good time of year for that. So we still got a little bit of the.
Yeah. Feels like it's November the 11th, as far as recruiting is concerned.
True. And again, like the show here, if you don't mind, hit a thumbs up. Subscribe to the YouTube channel here for BamaOnLine. Turn on those notifications. And, of course, we're going to talk more and more in depth about BamaOnline.com because there are so many great updates right now on the website. In fact, another big board up there for this recruiting cycle, especially where the offense is concerned. That just hit the website. We're going to get into some feature stuff that we've seen from Andrew and Joseph as well. So plenty of great stuff for you right now at BamaOnline.com. Joseph, I'm going to start with you on this one, where these latest updates to the prospect rankings are concerned, where, of course, On3, first and foremost, is concerned, but also 24/7 Sports. With what's happened here, what we've seen here in the last couple of days, give me a big surprise for you, or maybe a disparity that stood out to you. I think Andrew hit on it. For the most part, a lot of these guys are, at least if they're not neighbors, they're on the same street, so to speak, when it comes to rankings. But in some instances, you can have some pretty big disparities. Give me one of those guys maybe for you in this 2025 commitment list for Alabama.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is Michael Carroll, number 12 on On3, a 5-star prospect. Congratulations to him. He's a top-ranked interior offensive lineman on On3, and On3's been high on him for quite some time. I think he initially debuted at 118 in the country, the number 3 interior offensive lineman. Last fall has moved up. Charles Power is really high on his skill set, and you can see why. You see him standing next to Landon Dickerson, and an NFL player who just on a big contract. And, he's bigger than him, and he's got the physical frame that you're looking for. Really made a big jump from his sophomore to his junior season. And there's a lot of excitement about what he can do his senior year. Plays offensive line and defensive line. So we got him at number 12. Every other service has him below 100. One service even has them unranked, not nationally ranked. So, that's interesting when you see a level disparity like that, where it's over 100 spots from one service to another. But I lean with On3's rankings with Michael Carroll. And Alabama obviously does too, and all the schools that recruited him. Georgia made a very strong push. Michigan, which traditionally recruits offensive linemen at a very high level, they made a strong push. So I think Michael Carroll is the one that probably stands out the most, but there is another one.
No, you get one. No, you get one.
If there's any
Stop
left,
right there.
If there's any left, Joseph.
Look at Joseph trying to pick them all.
Stop right. No, because you know what? Joseph realized there was an even better one than Michael Carroll.
Joseph.
He was in mid swim and he saw that alligator. He's trying to get out of that pond. Too late.
He went through Aunt Alice's line, their food line at the reunion, and got to the end and realized he left something and wants to now cut back in.
I saw his eyes.
To the ribs
I would guess he's going with Latzir. I would guess he's going with Latzir Brooks. Michael Carroll's a great one. So, I mean, that's certainly not one to laugh at. But Latzir, I think Brooks is just a guy everyone doesn't know or hasn't really dug into as well as On3 has. I mean, he's got elite skills. You see his catches at 7-on-7. You see him on Twitter. He's doing all the stuff you used to see from a guy like Jefferson from LSU, the one-handed Odell catch. He's doing that in live games. The Julio's going up one-handed. His film's amazing. We got him updated this week he was a shade under 5'11", 180 plus pounds. So I knew he was thick. I knew he had a build to him because of how he looked, but that was assuming he was 5'9", 5'9 and a half, but he's closer to 5'11", 180 pounds. He's got that speed. I think, what was it, 22 miles per hour, something. Seems really fast. That's 21 miles an hour faster than I've ever went. So, but I knew where Joseph was going. I saw him like, hey, I got another one. But that's two good ones, though. Andrew?
What about you, Andrew?
I'll give him my third. I think Jackson Lloyd. I mean, this is a guy that's been, a BOL favorite since January. Since he was the first player that got an offer from Coach DeBoer when they arrived. But this is a kid that didn't go out to any camps. Kind of like Lazier Brooks. A lot of people didn't get a chance to see him because he doesn't go to high school camps or prospect camps, and that's kind of what Jackson Lloyd wasn't able to do this spring because he's got baseball, had basketball, but this is a 6'7", 290-pound offensive lineman that can flat out move. On3's got him ranked in the top 30 overall. I think 26 overall in the On 300, and then you look at 24/7, he's number 147. And I think a lot of that has to do with not being able to see these guys in person. You get a chance, we talked about it earlier, seeing guys in person helps, throughout the year. And when a guy is playing multiple sports, doesn't go to any camps, doesn't get seen, it's kind of hard to move those guys up. But with Charles Power, I think he looks at a lot of different criteria. I think he looks at the athletic profile, whether it's multiple sports, his length, his size, all the background information. Does a great job. And On3's been an outlier there, really since early in the spring as far as Jackson Lloyd's ranking. And I think Alabama is extremely excited to have him on board.
Guys, this may play into a little bit of the discussion we just had in terms of surprises, but from each of you, if there is an offensive and defensive commitment in this class so far that you think is going to have a little bit of extra motivation, we can talk about rankings and their impact. But hey, I think as a 17, 18-year-old, you probably always feel like maybe you're being slighted in some form or fashion. So I'll start with you, Joseph. We'll work back around to Tim and Andrew. Give me your offensive player and defensive player that you think's going to have a little bit of a what we'll call a blue chip on his shoulder this fall.
Yeah, I think Michael DeBose is one. He started off as a really, highly rated recruit, has kind of seen his ranking slip. He had a performance at the Under Armour camp, back in Atlanta during February, and he just, in terms of like weight adjustment, it was tough for him because he went from football to basketball season to soccer. So, his weight wasn't exactly where he wanted it to be for that camp. And he didn't have the greatest showing, but I think, during this offseason here, I got to see him back in May, looked like he was able to shed off a little bit of some bad weight and move a little bit better than he was at that Atlanta camp. So I think he'll come in, transfer schools, has a little bit more motivation there to, a little bit of a chip on his shoulder too, even though he committed to Alabama and was pursued by, the likes of LSU, Ohio State, to really have a strong showing during his senior season and an all-star game setting as well too. So he's one that we'd be looking for on the offensive side of the ball. And then defensive side of the ball, London Simmons, he camped at Alabama back on May 31st. Tim has mentioned it a few times about, losing 40 pounds, from his junior season to where he is now. So I'm interested to see how he moves and flashes on screen, on his tape during his senior year. He's one that I'd watch on the defensive side of the ball. 3-star prospect right now. Not in the On 300, but could be a riser. I'm not saying he's somebody that'll jump into the top 50 or anything, and a massive jump like that. But he could get himself into that On 300 and a higher positional ranking with a strong senior season.
Yeah, Tim, let's get your something to provers. We'll call them both on offense and defense for the upcoming season.
I'm going to go with Brooks again. He reached out to us and wanted his height and weight fixed. You know what I mean? So when you're like, because he probably heard it was true. People were saying he was not going to get a 5th star or go higher in the rankings because he's 5'9" and a half. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the exact case for that being, but he did want to do make sure, hey, this is where I'm at. That's where I was. So I think that's one thing. That's one motivational factor. And I don't have anything to back this up, but I'm wondering about Justin Hill. He's a very motivated kid. He feels a little light to me for an edge rusher with that skill set. I mean, when you look at his ranking overall, big guy that can run. He's very physical. I mean, when you see him on the field, he's definitely a motivated guy. I don't know if he's motivated by rankings. I don't know if any of these guys are really motivated by rankings, but he might be a guy that feels he has a little bit to prove.
Andrew, who are your two?
I'm going to go with Anthony Rogers, in-state running back at Carver High School. Been committed to Alabama since last summer. And this is a kid that had a lot of hype as a freshman and a sophomore at Pike Road High School. I mean, he helped Pike Road win a state championship as a freshman. Sophomore year, rushed for over 1,600 yards. Now, this is a guy that played behind Quinshawn Junkins at Pike Road as a freshman, and had an unbelievable freshman season. Then goes for 1,600 yards as a sophomore. Then transfers to IMG, where he's playing behind guys that are seniors that are committed to a big time program. So it was kind of a little tough transition for him, but is back in Montgomery area playing at Carver High School. I think he's going to have a really big season at Carver, and really excited to see kind of what he's going to be able to do. And then I think on the defensive side of the ball, I really like Luke Metz. Luke Metz is 6'2", 225-pound inside linebacker. Plays at Mill Creek High School.
Yeah, good one.
If you go to our message board on BOL, BOLers will say that he is the best player to ever come out of Mill Creek High School. This is a guy that had a great junior season. A lot of schools jumped on him during the spring. Georgia offered him kind of late, but they really pressed hard for him. They really wanted to keep him in state, but he was already committed to Alabama. 3-star kind of across the industry. Now, he is a 4-star in the On3 Industry Rankings. I think one of the other sites has him pretty high, but consistently he's a 3-star. I think he's going to have a chance to really prove some guys wrong this upcoming season and have a chance to move up into that 4-star category across the board.
How about Tighter NFL here with a $5?
Oh,
yeah, you know where that's going too. That's a $5 footlong for Tim Watts immediately
Guns
after
out, guns out too for my guy.
I don't even think
good.
I don't even think there are
Thank you.
$5 footlongs anymore, right? It's like $7 6-inch.
You know what they
now.
created that I've got to try? Have you seen the dipping sticks? Have y'all seen these?
I haven't seen those.
They are like a long thin Subway that you dip in a sauce. So they're like a Subway churro.
Oh, the churros.
Oh, I've seen the churros. Yeah.
No. This is a Subway sandwich.
Oh,
in the shape of a churro. It's long. Yeah. It's round. You dip it. That's not the best.
Yeah, I don't hate on. A lot of people hate on Subway. I don't hate on it.
Andrew hates on it. I like it. I do the flatbread. I don't like their big bread.
I mean, I'm a Firehouse guy probably if I'm going to chain it up.
Those are good.
Yeah,
hey, Jersey Mike kicks some rear end. But thank you, Tyler in Florida. We appreciate it, buddy.
Absolutely. And hey, guys, let's understanding that we're still a ways until December and really until this process comes to a close in terms of the rankings. Tim, I'll start with you on this one. A rankings riser guy that you would look to in terms of being able to make an ascent or come onto the scene like a Josh Jacobs in the past and really make good use of this upcoming fall.
Yeah, I won't choose like low-hanging fruit with guys that rose that we actually thought were good, but I do. Christian Barmore is one I would jump out there. I mean, the big guy playing up in Philly, hadn't really heard his name, had a good senior year, moved around. NFL guy. He's one of those guys, I like the dancing bears, when they come in and guys that can move at that size. He was that guy, very undisciplined, very much figuring it out raw. Good evaluation by the Bama staff to see the upside. Had to show a lot of patience with him at Alabama. You run a reverse, he would be running it with you. He'd be running with the first guy. So, but obviously second round draft pick, very well could have been the first one, having a good career, popped out of nowhere. And you know what? There's going to be some this year. There are every year. It's not to say Bama will get them, but Bama will find some. And then you'll see a guy that's a 3-star with all of a sudden LSU, Ohio State, Bama, Florida offers, whoever. And you'll see his stock rise in the college coach's eyes.
Who's your guy for this one as far as hearkening back and thinking about players and prospects that made that big leap, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm going to take it back a little bit. Probably Rashaan Evans. Rashaan was one of the best high school football players that I remember watching, and it really kind of came on stronger during his, from a leap from his junior year to his senior year. Alabama hadn't even offered him during the spring. He had to go to Alabama's football camp to really make an impression on the staff because he was playing with his hand in the dirt. He was basically a defensive lineman. They were moving him outside to inside. He really hadn't played much linebacker, but then ends up playing linebacker as a senior. Now, I remember that Alabama Mississippi All-Star game. He was an absolute terror coming off the edge. I think he was named the MVP of the game after his performance. He had something like 3 sacks, and Alabama offered him during the summer. Really kind of made a strong run at him during the season. Obviously, they were able to get him out of Auburn, but I think that's a guy that we saw. He was a highly ranked kid as far as being a 4-star. I don't know if he was a top 100 kid going into his senior season, but ended up getting that 5th star by the end. And, that was a guy that I'll always remember, being a steady riser throughout the entire process.
And we go to the young guy, Joseph Hastings. I don't know. Does retro apply for Joseph here? I mean, it's got to be the last couple of years, but hey, it's still fresh, right? You have, a good recall still, Joseph. And who would be that guy for you?
Yeah, Tim and Bone can reflect on the VHS days.
I like it.
Meanwhile, I've got a couple cycles to work with. But I think the one that jumped out to me immediately was Yonsei Pierre. So it's interesting with him. He debuted, I think, at like number 40 in the initial On 300. And then when his senior season started, he was about number 60. But with a strong senior year, a strong performance in the All-American Bowl in San Antonio, he rose up all the way to number 17, was a 5-star in On 3, 5-star in 247, 5-star on Rivals, and it sucks. He should have been a 5-star plus prospect, 5 stars across the board, but ESPN put him at number 72. But most of the rankings had him in that top 32 range, and well-deserved. I mean, long kid, played basketball, big hands. I got to see him, I think, about a month or so after he committed to Alabama in April 2022. If I'm recalling that correctly. It's been a long time, but yeah, so much has happened over the past couple of years. But I got to see him, great kid. Really kind of just puts his head down and goes to work. Lunch pail type of guy, just in terms of really focused all on football and making sure that he's taking care of his body. Made some great improvements from where he was that offseason to the end of the year. So Yonsei Pierre is the one that stands out to me the most. Jose Mincy's another one too that comes to mind.
Yeah.
The thing about Pierre, there were some people fighting against it. I mean, I'll tell you this, when you get a call, we get the camp when the camps were different than they are now. Camps were for working out and kicking butt and getting you an offer and all that. Well, it's not uncommon for a defensive coach to mention a defensive guy, especially in his group. But when an offensive coach mentions, and the offensive coaches were talking about Yonsei, they were talking like, who the hell is this guy? This guy's an issue. It's hard to get a good rep for my offensive lineman. That's something. Same way the defensive back coaches were when they were like, hey, have you heard this guy named Amari Cooper? And I'm like, he must have lit you up a whole camp session. Well, that was Pierre. A lot of people wanted to fight him on it, dominated the camp. His spring game of his last year, his last spring game is amazing. He dominated the Bama camp, obviously. But there were some people that he had to show his stuff. Charles Power, those guys were on him early, but he really had to prove himself to other people. It's a good call.
You go back and think about some of these camp performances throughout the years, and some of the guys that I'll always remember. Yonsei, Will Anderson, Amari Cooper, as you mentioned. One other guy that jumped out was Jalen Waddle. Those were some guys that went to camp, showed out, really moved up the rankings. But those are 4 guys that I'm always going to remember as coaches saying, hey, what the hell? These guys are unbelievable. So
yeah,
always guys probably more than anybody else.
The Amari call was, this guy's the best guy we've seen since Julio Jones. And this isn't, coaches don't throw it around like fans do. So that was like, holy crap. And then a quick glance at Amari's film. And I mean, has he ever been covered? What in high school or college?
Someone told me, they said, this guy, before he committed, when he got the offer at Alabama's camp that summer, they said he's going to be a starter at Alabama this fall. I said, I don't even know if this offer is committable yet. I still got to find out if this offer is committable. And they said, trust us, he's going to start at Alabama next season as a true freshman.
Three years of Rivals fans saying all you got to do to beat Alabama is stop Amari Cooper. Like the defensive coordinators, that wasn't priority. Dude was not just open; he was 5 yards open constantly. Pretty amazing route runner, quickness and all.
Touchdown catch on the deep ball from A.J. McCarron in the 2012 SEC championship game. That's an iconic play, and that was his true freshman season there for Amari Cooper. Hey, guys, we certainly appreciate each and every one of you tuning in once again to the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. Again, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Turn on those notifications. If you don't mind, a thumbs up as well. We would certainly appreciate that. And also, BamaOnLine.com. That's where you need to be. Fresh nuggets here in the last day right there for BOL subscribers. And if you know, you know. And if you don't, you should, where the nuggets are concerned. And just great content on a consistent basis from these three guys and also Charlie Potter, Jimmy Stein. So all of that waiting for you right now. But be sure to get over to BOL right now if you haven't already. Check out those nuggets. Unlike some places, we have nuggets 7 days a week.
You know, it's funny. We were writing the nuggets, and we were like, it seems like it's been months since a commitment, but it had literally been 1 week. It does. Like, it's like the dead period. I don't think, and I love this about recruiting fans, they don't think the dead period actually is dead. Like, it's dead, especially compared to June, where they could call it, as live as it gets June. But when it goes dead, and there's an empty. We got a little bit of that fresh Prince of Bel-Air, after Justin Hill committed, looking around, seeing what was going on. So, but we think things will pick back up. Coach is on a quick break.
Hey, let's talk wide receivers, guys, because you talk about things that could happen in the very foreseeable future. Andrew, I'm going to start with you right there. Some decisions that are coming up here in the next few days that involve Alabama, and then some that we're kind of wondering at any time, right, could come to fruition with a certain 5-star from the state of Mississippi as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of eyes are on Caleb Cunningham to see what he's going to be able to do. Maybe over the course of the next couple of weeks. A lot of traction there for Alabama since his official visit on June the 21st, and that's a kid that has named a couple of schools as a leader throughout the process, but Alabama was named as the favorite after the official, and nothing's really changed since then. So I think that's pretty good for the Crimson Tide. Obviously, other schools are still fighting there, hoping that he holds off from making a decision, pushes it into the fall. But we don't really see that. We think a decision is probably coming down the pipeline very soon. We have made predictions previously on BOL in favor of the Crimson Tide there. So I think it's just a matter of, when it's going to happen, and we believe it's going to happen relatively soon. So we're keeping a close eye on Caleb Cunningham.
Joseph, what's your expectation for how this might play out? Do you have a feel, or are you kind of like the rest of us, just day to day, really just anticipating how this thing might go at wide receiver?
Yeah, day to day, just seeing how the dominoes will fall. Obviously, Alabama has three guys that they really like. Decisions coming. Derek Meadows set his commitment date for July 13th. You got Khalid Lockett August 7th. Alabama really made a big jump in his recruitment last month, and then like we've been talking about Caleb Cunningham. That was interesting for me because I felt, and I mentioned this before his official visit, I felt like Alabama could have some momentum coming out after it and heading into the dead period, and that a July decision date would probably benefit Bama the most instead of him holding it out to the end of the season. But I thought maybe because of how his previous officials went, that maybe some things may have changed, or we would have heard some different things. But it continues to be steady in terms of that very high interest in Alabama. So yeah, just watching, waiting to see how these dominoes fall here. Also, once again, shout out to Tyler in Florida. He said he's from Davie. I'm down here in Miami. Weather's beautiful. Hope you're enjoying it, man.
Hey, Tim, quit holding out. Go ahead and tell us, the wide receivers that Alabama's going to pick up.
This room and the defensive line room has been interesting because they didn't want mass numbers. They weren't looking to sign 4 or 5 in a group. Wide receivers numbers we heard early on were 2. and they went to great lengths to get the first one with Lightzeer Brooks, one great eval by Jamarcus Shepard. So we knew they'd take one more, but then when you get to that one more, and then you get to could they take a second because he's too good to pass up, you got a group of guys that you got to like move when it's time to move. Travis Smith is a guy. Bama was slow. Then they pushed, got him on official visit. And then after he left the official visit, he took other visits. He's committing. It's Saturday, right?
Saturday.
Travis is committing Saturday. We think Tennessee's in a really good spot there when all's said and done. Derek Meadows is one we're still searching on. That guy's been pretty quiet. We've heard a little LSU talk. He's committing Saturday. I don't know why everybody's committing on Saturday. It's their summer. That's every day Saturday, guys. When you're out of school for the summer, every day Saturday. But there have been a lot of Saturday commitments, and we're still digging on Derek. And we've heard Notre Dame talk. They really would like to keep him in this class. They've lost a guy or two, and LSU's pushing really hard. They're trying to add a wide receiver. And again, Andrew mentioned Caleb Cunningham. Bama's in there. Joseph mentioned, I think, Kalik Lockett. And so Bama's in a good position because if they get two of their guys, they're content. They don't have to get the third one that's too good to pass up, but they're in a position you get the two you want, and then you're battling for the too good to pass up guy. That's the position you want to be, and we're seeing that pretty consistently this year.
Yeah, and that to go along with a dynamic playmaker that's already in this class, right? In Lightzeer Brooks.
Yeah, and Ryan Williams. That's
could have been, yeah.
That's kind of where this thing shook out a little bit.
Yeah, and the receivers they got in the 2024 class too. Rico Scott, Amari Jefferson, bringing in Jeremy Bernard as a transfer. I mean, they really addressed the receiver position in a big way in that 2024 class, and it gives you an opportunity to do what they're doing now and being able to select the right guys. Maybe not the biggest class, but select the guys that they want, and it could still be a very impressive class when it's all said and done.
How good is a room where we consistently forget to mention Caleb Odom?
Yeah.
Like seriously, like I have to remind.
But you just took it off.
I knew you.
Tim likes to take.
Yeah, I knew you were fixing to, like my kids were fixing to clean their room when I yelled at them about it.
Tim's like, I get more.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to mix up 3 guys in 2 minutes. You like to go 3 minutes on one guy. I got banged.
I said
I wrote about 50 stories on Caleb Odom, it feels like, and all of them I put tight end. Tight end.
No, I'm the same. No, that's what I was saying.
It's like wired into my brain.
Well, he didn't want to be listed as a tight end. He wanted to be listed as a wide receiver. And we're like, you're number 1 tight end in the country. I don't want to be number 1 tight end.
That's true.
All right, guys, let's jump over the defensive side of the ball for just a minute. And it's been a very good stretch here in the last couple of weeks at the Wolf position. As we know, Dawson Merritt jumps on board, outstanding prospect. And then Justin Hill as well. 2 really, really dynamic defensive runners and hitters, I like to call them. And Andrew, you had a great update on Dawson Merritt, specifically with his father. Just wanted to get a couple of the highlights of that for you. I mean, obviously, if you haven't read it as of yet, or you don't have access, that's another reason why you need to be with us at BamaOnLine.com right now. Just a couple of nuggets within the nuggets, if you have those for us, Andrew.
Right. Yeah, I had a great conversation with his father, Dave Merritt, who's a 5-time Super Bowl winning assistant coach. Won 2 Super Bowls with the New York Giants, has won 3 Super Bowls with the Kansas City Chiefs. So he's been around a lot of top players, and just talking to him the other day, was great. And he talked about the relationships with Coach DeBoer, Courtney Morgan. That relationship kind of stemmed back all the way at Washington. They started recruiting Dawson last year. I think it was in October, and he said, as we were watching the season, we're like, man, Washington's actually a pretty good football team. And he goes, and then they go on and play in the national championship. He goes, we were set on taking a visit out to Seattle. He goes, even though it was a little bit further away from home than we were expecting Dawson to go, that was a program that we really liked, and that communication remained. He said he was shocked when that he took the Alabama job, but Dawson wasn't. Dawson was all over it, said that he predicted Coach DeBoer to get that job. And I felt like we had a great conversation with him. There was a lot of highlights throughout that conversation, from talking about Taylor Swift, talking about Patrick Mahomes, reaching out, congratulating Dawson on committing to Alabama. But it was the whole point of the whole interview was this recency bias. He said, we go to all these different schools, see all these different things. We're blown away. We're loving it. We're excited. We're ready to commit. But then you got to go home. You got to sit down. You got to, weigh the pros and cons of each program. And that's what Dawson did when he got home after each one of these visits. And he goes, even mom and dad were excited about each one of these visits. We're ready to commit, but he did a great job. Went on that official visit to Alabama on June the 7th. Took a couple weeks, then was ready to commit. And it was certainly a enjoyable read. It was an enjoyable conversation to put together, and I certainly recommend anybody to go check that interview out on BOL.
Tim, I guess the common denominator too in a lot of this, Christian Robinson, right, as a recruiter. And
yeah, I just want to point out that Andrew was talking about Taylor Swift, not Mr. Merritt. It was Andrew who also just said it was an enjoyable read about his own story. I want to point that out when he says I was talking.
It is. I think
he's going to have to go in concussion protocol.
I think you're speaking of biased. Yeah. I think you're Regency biased. I think you need to.
I'm always biased about my articles.
Yeah, I read them. I love them. That's my first thing in the morning. So Christian Robinson did a great job. I mean, you look at this guy digging in where he had to go, who he had to fight. I mean, Nebraska, people look at Nebraska like it's just Nebraska. Nebraska fist fought for him. Nebraska was all in trying to land Dawson Merritt. Made a great case, as Andrew just said, how tough the decision was. Everybody thought it was a layup. It felt like a layup in April, but in May and June, it felt a lot different. So that was a heated battle he won. And then to go into Ohio, you can't stress this enough. You go into Ohio, this is a top target for the Buckeyes. They're talking about creating a whole new position just for him. I guess their version of the Jack, I guess, is how they were going to use him, because they've got great defensive ends. We've seen a lot of those guys line up like Chase Young and the Bosa brothers. That's how I think you initially thought. So he wanted to play with his hands standing up, but he had two really heated battles to go at. And he also does stuff like assist people in other states and lays the groundwork. But it was a good day for him last Wednesday, because we noticed he also tweeted out happy anniversary. Mm-hmm. So the anniversary is a little bit better when you get Justin Hill. I'm sure the wife was like, come on now, Justin. But yeah, excellent job by him. And all the feedback we hear, and Justin and Andrew can tell you, from the kids, from the parents, he's just a good guy. He's just a guy people want to talk to and hang out with. He's just a nice guy, which pays off in recruiting, and he works really hard.
And how about the interview that we saw with Justin Hill, saying that it was such a tough decision that he was heading to the announcement, and another school had reached out saying, offering him more from an NIL perspective. So obviously schools are fighting hard to get him. And obviously we know the schools that were heavily involved there with Oregon and Ohio State and Alabama, but being able to get him to stick with that decision to Alabama, obviously got to recruit him all the way until the end. But I think that says a lot about Coach Robinson and the entire coaching staff at Alabama.
Guys, as we wrap up on the latest edition on the YouTube home for BamaOnline.com, Alabama still sitting there at number 2 in the team rankings. Joseph, what's your kind of thoughts on the possibility of Alabama going to Luda and coming for that number 1 spot there?
Absolutely. And before I get into that, I want to address Michael's comment real quickly about Meadows' RPM reflecting 85% Notre Dame. So the context there is that Notre Dame prediction was back in June 2023. So, a lot has changed since that time. Not saying he isn't going to Notre Dame or he's going to a specific place, but that's part of the reason why, that prediction's still in. But going over to that number 1 class, we've talked about it a lot, how it's mathematically possible for Alabama to get to that number 1 spot, even when their class score was 92.5, and Ohio State's was close to 94.5. Always maintained it was a mathematic possibility for them to do so. And yeah, there are the scenarios that are in place. If things go Alabama's way with some of these recruitments we've discussed, where Bama could get that number one spot. Obviously we'll see how things play out with some other schools. Oregon is rising; they're surging. Recruiting really well on the trail right now. A lot of things are happening there. So we'll see what ultimately ends up. They'll be in contention for that number one spot. You can't rule out Georgia either. Especially with some of the guys that they're still in play for. But Bama's got multiple 5-stars that they're looking to add to the fold, and Caleb Cunningham, Ty Haywood. We've talked about A.K. Deere, who's a top 40 overall prospect. The scenario is definitely there for them to land that number one spot. And the fact that Alabama is even in this position in Kalen DeBoer's, first full recruiting cycle with the Crimson Tide it's nothing short of impressive.
What about it, Tim?
Yeah, I just think, I love the rankings. I love the team rankings. I love the discussion, but I mean, we don't know. I mean, you don't know who the 5-stars are going to be, which affects your team ranking. Hypothetical, what if Keelan Russell ends up number one in the country in February? That's a big boost in your ranking wise. What if Ohio State loses a recruiter, Bama loses a recruiter, LSU gets one of those recruits? There's so much going on. I think to me is I follow the process. Obviously we all do, month to month, and we know where we're at in June, but we know that doesn't mean where they're going to be at in February. They did a really complete class. If you look at it, you had Steve, from Canada, who's going to junior college for 1 year. We had that story last week. Was it this week? We had 1 week.
Yeah, so
it was on Sunday, whatever week that was. So Steve's going to junior college in Mississippi. He could come back in January as a Bandit. That'd be their third defensive line commitment. What happens with Lockett? What happens with Caleb Cunningham? There's so much. Does A.K. Deere get a 5th star? Because he's hovering right around that top 35 area.
Yeah.
So just so much to be determined. I like this right there. Cover Andrew up. Go back. That no. You finally found our niche, Travis. There we are. Yes. Travis.
I'm out of here.
Poor Andrew.
Andrew said, forget the big three. It's just big me.
I thought I would only do 3 pictures. I realized Andrew's covered up. I'm sorry. But yeah, Bama's did a great job. I agree with Joseph and Andrew, all of you guys. They did a really good job setting it up going into the spring, going into football season.
Andrew, you made the call about over 20 commitments by August 15th, way in advance.
Thanks,
Even
Travis.
with some attrition, you're still there. You ready to make a call right now for the number one class for the Alabama Crimson Tide? You ready?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There he goes. Hold my beer.
I'm not gonna say number one class.
Hold my beer, Bone.
For the early signing. I'm gonna say the number one class in the country heading into August. That's what I believe. I think Alabama's gonna have a great chance putting together an unbelievable class. I don't think there's any doubt that Alabama's going to sign obviously an outstanding recruiting class. It all kind of depends on what happens elsewhere. What's going to happen at Georgia? Are they going to be able to get? They have one 5-star defensive line commitment right now in Isaiah Gibson. There's 2 other 5-star defensive linemen that they're very involved with: Elijah Griffin, who's the number 1 defensive lineman in the country; Justice Terry, who's another 5, both in-state kids for Georgia. What if they're able to get both of those guys? Justice Terry's also heavily involved with Alabama. So, that could potentially shake up that number 1 class a little bit. You look at Oregon, the way that they've been recruiting the guys that are seem to be leaning towards there right now. They're currently in that 4th spot, but they could continue to climb. And then obviously with Ohio State, are they going to be able to get somebody like David Sanders? David Sanders, that's kind of an Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee recruiting battle right now. Does he go to Ohio State? Does that solidify them as the top recruiting class in the country heading into the fall? We'll just have to kind of wait and see. But it's a fun race to watch right now, and it's going to be a fun race to watch. I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes once the season kind of gets underway. But once we get into November and that early signing period, December the 4th, that's going to be kind of the tell of the whole tape there with this, who's going to finish with the #1 recruiting class in the country.
A lot that can still happen, and a lot of coverage for you right there as you see it now without blocking Andrew Bone. BamaOnLine.com. Look at the stuff we have right now. Alabama Offensive Big Board 3.0, where things currently stand in the Tides class. Bama Online Recruiting Nuggets, decisions loom from priority Alabama targets. And hey, don't forget about hoops either, because we know Nate Oates is lights out right now, and Joseph Hastings with an update on a 5-star point guard with the latest on Alabama's pursuit and interest. So all that stuff waiting for you right now at BamaOnline.com.
If you want to know how good Kalen DeBoer's recruiting's been, they're barely talking about basketball now. Because at one point, they barely were talking about football. Nate was absolutely dominating the discussion. So that June heat wave kind of put it out. But, again, excited about that season, that basketball and football season, excited to see both of them go to work.
Yeah, what a great run when you start getting into late October, early November with football and everything that should be on the table. Woo, crazy, crazy good stuff. Hey, guys, as always, Quad Box is a ton of fun. You guys knocked it out of the park. And again, you see the thumbs up from Andrew Bone. We'd appreciate it here. If you would hit us with a like before you step out of here, and subscribe if you haven't already to the YouTube home of BamaOnline.com. Turn on those notifications. You'll get all of our YouTube content as it drops. For Tim Watts, for Andrew Bone, for Joseph Hastings, Travis Reier, thanking you once again. And until next time, so long, everybody.